Welcome to Mattys Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand.
I decided to ask my question one more time before I give up for good. Mr. Hanson, I say, what is anxiety? What do you mean, Tommy? He asks. There's some chalk on the ledge under the chalkboard, so I grab it and write on the board. Then he says, Tommy, anxiety is when you feel afraid that something bad is going to happen. He holds out his hand and I give him the chalk. He smiles and says, anxiety is the body's alarm system that warns us if something bad might happen. Have you ever felt like there were millions of butterflies in your belly? I sure have, I say, at least once every day. Well, that's what anxiety feels like. And it can be a good thing. It can help us be safe. Like when you see a car speeding down the street and you get a little scared and decide to wait and cross the street later.
Hello!
Hello, Matt. How are you?
Jackie Mackay, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks so much for coming out here to do this. I really appreciate it. So you are a registered therapist? Is that
Yeah, clinical social worker, clinical counselor, yes.
Clinical counselor. An author of the book that you just read of. Thank you so much for doing that, for a little intro.
You're welcome.
So you wrote the book in 2009 and it's a children's book, right?
Yes, 2009 I was working as a counselor with children ages approximately 5 to age 11. And we were seeing so many children at the agency I worked at experiencing anxiety that I had this idea for a book that was fun, like a story, not all clinical, like more of a story about a child that's dealing with it, but a real story and a real kid that plays soccer and has a full life besides just having anxiety.
Right.
And just a relatable guy about age 9 or 10. And then there's a few little tips in the book about how to manage your anxiety, but it's overall a story, and my attempt was to normalize anxiety, that
Right.
most kids get it, most people get it, and how to try to manage it.
That's awesome. You mind just pulling this up a little bit? Thank you. So, when did you start working with kids, and did you notice it like increase over a certain amount of time?
Yes, definitely. Started, well, probably 98, 99, started working with children, like adults as well, but children and adults. And definitely by the mid-2000s, I was seeing a shift that there was more anxiety, more pressure, kids weren't as carefree. And in my training back in the 80s, part of my training was play therapy, which is trying to work with the child at their level, like sand tray therapy, play therapy. And the idea is you build rapport, you get the child comfortable, and you don't ask a lot of questions, but through the play, they start to tell you their story.
Yeah.
And you don't hit them with, 20 questions, because kids will shut down. So I was working at Catholic Family Services Bureau at the time, and we developed a play therapy room. And it was through that we started working with a lot of children, and then we were aware that anxiety was peaking somewhere around the mid-2000s. And that's when the book came out and continued to work with kids. The play therapy room was very successful. In fact, the Bureau still has counselors there doing that. And I left there, I worked there for 24 years, and I left there in 2011 to do some other things, but they still work with children there.
That's really interesting stuff. That's really cool about how like you just kind of play with kids and then they eventually kind of come out and tell you things.
Yes, yeah. We were trying it the other way, and we realized this isn't, like parents would take their child in or youth in, and we try to talk to them the way we did adults.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing for the child to play with, and kids are very physical, and the guys and girls, we needed physical material that they could play with, balls, sand tray, figurines. We just needed to make it more kid-friendly.
Yeah.
So we just picked up on that naturally, that this isn't working, they're not comfortable in these adult offices, so let's try another way. And it really did blossom. We got some really good feedback, and I think it's still a good thing that's happening at the Bureau.
That's something I definitely noticed from working with kids, as I worked at like an after-school program. It's just like you asking them a question, they don't always respond at all, but like just playing with them, like, you know, you hang out with them for a while, they'll probably start telling you things.
Yes, I'm sure you would, experience that if you're playing ball with them or just hanging out with them. And that's exactly what we found. And you can give them strategies later on, or like our training, but you can't do anything if you don't have rapport with the child first.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing, I'm sure, every day at your job. Build a rapport, and kids need that. They need to feel comfortable. Adults as well, they need to feel comfortable with you before they're going to share anything.
Yeah. I think part of it's probably just like an energy thing too. Like even simple questions like, "How was your day?" Kids will be like, "Good," and then like run away. But like if you're just hanging out with them, like playing catch or something, they'll just like start telling you about their day.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's pretty interesting. What would you say, do you have any theories about why anxiety spiked around the mid-2000s?
Yes, my theory on that is that lives got busier and busier and busier. Our generation of parents might have overdone it a little bit on the activities. Like, it's great that children are involved, but they need a lot of free play and creative play, and I kind of felt some of that was missing. They were in organized activities, which is good, and organized sports is good, and organized activities, but it seems like there was a little bit of a void in just free play and just where you can just be creative and relax. So that was one thing I thought was a piece of it. And starting to become more complex family systems, and sometimes that's great. It's just sometimes a lot of change with blended families, and a lot of new adults to get to know, and sometimes it works out for the best, but it's still a lot of transition and adults in children's lives that they have to adjust to. So there was some of that as well. And high achieving, like there's a big culture of high achieving, it seems now. Like they start kindergarten younger, and they go to full day kindergarten quite young, and there's a lot of pressure to be little successes. And some of the kids in their own way would talk about that they felt pressure to be a great hockey player, or to get really high marks. And I mean, we want them to be successful, but some kids I felt were feeling a lot of pressure to be the best. So a few things like that were definitely on my mind when I wrote the book, and the kids, some of them coming from very complex backgrounds, and some coming from fairly regular backgrounds, but many different people experiencing anxiety for different reasons, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you think technology had anything to do with it at that time?
Yes, we were just, I think, start to see the beginning of that at that time, and I think it's increased even more so now. It's real easy for kids to go in their room and play video games, and all the kids love it, and especially boys, I think, some girls too, but and there's nothing wrong with that to a point. It's just sometimes you lose your coping skills, and it's team sports, and I'm sure because you're athletic, it's team sports and playing outside, not even organized sports, but just playing ball or something that people learn
Social
coping
skills?
coping strategies and social skills, and you learn that, okay, maybe I'm not picked first, but I learned to cope with that.
Yeah.
Like, and on the video games, like if you're doing too much of that, you're not experiencing the regular coping skills that you have to out on the playground, you know?
Yeah.
So I do think that's a part too, a
Mhm.
factor, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mid-2000s, I'm just thinking about like, because I think video games, like handheld video games, were just starting to come.
Yes.
A big thing then.
Yes.
So that could have been part of it. It's interesting though, like I wonder what the shift was for the high achievement, because it's definitely something that you see in today's society and that I definitely notice.
Yeah.
Although I don't really have much to compare it to, but it's like, there's definitely the high achieve culture.
Oh, totally. Like this talk about you gotta get signed up for this daycare and signed up for this kindergarten. And that started when we had our first child, and it's just escalated. Like, and coming from like being born in the 60s, I had the other experience where like you just go to school and you do your best. And it wasn't like you had to be at the best school or like, and I think our generation, well, there wasn't perhaps as much access to things, but we also, there just wasn't as much pressure. It was like, yes, go to school and school's important, but it wasn't so...
Like it's everything, like portrayed like it's everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, you are the mother of my friend,
Yes.
who had passed away a couple of years ago.
Right.
Just so people know how we know each other.
Right?
His name is Ben. He died of cancer a couple of years ago. He was your son. And we've had a lot of good talks since then. I was good friends with Ben, and Carrie Lynn, my girlfriend who died, actually died a couple months after in May, and Ben died in November, right?
Ben died in September.
September,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah, September.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole year's a blur.
Yes, for sure.
So we've had a lot of good talks, and I'm glad that you're here. And how are you doing now with the grieving?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. It's going to be 4 years this September, and I have to say, like I was a trained counselor. Was trained in grief counseling, and nothing in this world prepared me for losing a child. Nothing. And I was devastated, and there's not even a word really to describe it. I felt, it sounds strange, but I felt like I had an amputation, or that the world went dark, or it was very, very intense. So I'm saying, like the first two, this is coming up on the 4th year. The first 3 years, I had a lot of support. You as friends, your peer group and Ben's friends have been great supports. I had family support. I have a lot of friends in the mental health profession. And so I kind of coped through it, but I was having a really rough time, but it was just natural grief process, but very, very hard. And trying to parent Emma, a 16-year-old, at the same time, and having a hard time seeing Charlie and Emma go through all this as well. Because as much as I was struggling, they were heartbroken too. So the first 3 years was very, very hard, but it was I wasn't fully depressed. But on the 3rd anniversary, which when you say how you doing now, you kind of, with grief, it's so strange, but I think if you haven't had a depth of loss like we've had, like you with Carrie Lynn and me with Ben, I think there's a notion out there that you're good, not good, but you're kind of getting better after a year or 2 years. And the first 3 years were terrible. But I have to say the 3rd, I wasn't fully depressed, but by anniversary number 3, I hit I hit a depression and I had to get more serious help because I think I was tired carrying the grief. I'm not sure why the 3rd anniversary. I was tired carrying the grief. It didn't seem to be getting any better. It's an ache that never leaves. So
Yeah.
it was, so September 19th was this past fall was his 3rd anniversary. I hit it real low, but I can say I got some more help with, had to do some alternative therapies like hypnotherapy with Darlene Way on Richmond Street. She's great service there, and did a little bit of Reiki, which talk therapy was my thing. I knew about it and I know how to do it, but for this loss I felt I needed some of those alternative therapies. And then finally, there's a really good doctor in the mental health profession that provided me, finally I had to take mild antidepressant. So having done that, taken the meds, my serotonin got depleted from dealing with this whole tragedy. I wasn't somebody that was depressed like throughout. I never had to take antidepressants before. I hadn't had a bout of depression before. But with the doctor's help, and I have to say, never having had it before, but my serotonin got depleted just from the tragedy, and it's been a big help. And so is the support. There's been so much support from you guys, his peer group and family and friends and other mental health professionals too. And so it's definitely easing somewhat. But it's, I've learned that it's an ache there's gonna be a hollow part in me forever. And I think when you first lose someone, you think it'll go away, but it doesn't fully ever go away. When it's that depth of loss, and when we were having the children in the mid-90s, I lost both of my parents within 8 months. But it's not in any way to compare to losing a child. Like I was, I loved my parents, but I had moved on from that after 3 to 6 months. But this was just totally whole different.
Stuck with me was that I lost both parents at, what, you were 30 or so?
Yeah, I was 30, I was 35, 34, yeah.
And you said that it didn't even compare to this, and that's something that stuck with me. And you kind of talked a little bit about depth of loss. I guess there really is like a depth of loss, whenever you lose someone that you couldn't imagine losing.
Yes.
And
yes.
How long it takes to go through that grieving process.
Yeah, it's
something I just didn't know about because I never lost. I mean, Ben died not too long before she did. I lost like a grandmother. I've been around death before, but this was just something that I just didn't even know I could feel.
Yes, yeah, the depth of it is when it's, as you say, when it's somebody you can't imagine losing or living without. Like even our parents, from a certain age, once we're young adults, we realize, well, we're going to lose our parents. Like that's always with you, and nobody wants it to happen, but you're like a tiny bit prepared for it.
Yeah.
But losing a significant other for you, I'm sure, and losing Ben for me was just like I really literally felt. I got anxiety attacks too, which I never had in my life before, because the anxiety attacks were from this thought, I can't be just buying groceries. I can't live in this world. Everybody's acting normal and I can't live in this world without Ben. Like my son is gone. Like I can't cope. And then the anxiety would come up. And that again was something I didn't have to deal with before. But I was just like, the world was so dark. And I, thankfully have a good husband and a wonderful daughter. And, of course that helps keep you going. But that doesn't take away the loss of Ben. Like I'm so grateful to have Emma and I'm so grateful to have Charlie, but I still couldn't imagine a world without Ben. Like and I still can't, but I have to live it. Like I have to live it. So You do, but it's certainly a grueling journey, as you know. Yeah.
It's kind of like living in a nightmare, and you have to slowly accept it.
It's so true, and I'm sure you've heard people say, I don't know how you do it. And I don't know how I do it either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, and same with you, you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it, but I can't imagine how we do it either.
It's kind of like when people say that, or you're so strong. And I mean, a lot of these feelings came up when it first happened too. It's like you can say I'm strong or whatever, and it's like a nice thing to say. And those things are just nice things to say.
Yeah.
So it's always from a good place, but it's just the feeling that you get is like I just don't have a choice. Like they're gone. Like I don't have a choice but to do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like there's the finality of death is very real. You know.
It's very, very real. And I read a quote, I don't know what book it was from, but it was about a woman who had come through, it's from years ago, but she came through war and lost, I think, a husband and a child, and she phrased it like, the only reason I didn't die is like because I just kept living. Like you're, because people were saying to her, you're strong. Well, she said, I just didn't, like I'm still here, so I don't know how I did it, but I'm still here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and in our case, when Ben was told Ben's cancer was very aggressive. Like there's cancers and then there's cancers, and Ben's was one of the most aggressive, osteosarcoma in the bone, and then it spread to his lungs, and it happened really fast. We had 1 month from diagnosis to his death, and he was in pretty good shape. Like he wasn't like suffering where you're thinking. They thought it was a ligament issue at first, and he was planting trees in New Brunswick, and he looked great that summer. So it was just a voracious cancer that when it hit, it took over really fast. But I guess what I was going to say there was Ben was told he was terminal at 19 years old, almost 20, but 19. And he couldn't have made it any easier for us, but it still was, look, I'm sure it'd be harder if Ben didn't proceed the way he did. But when Ben was told he was terminal, somehow he focused on us, and he said, I'm not afraid to die, and carry on and remember the good times, and I had a happy life, and I'm okay. And that was such a gift that he could do that. And it helps, but it's hard. I guess it helps to some degree, but it's still really, really challenging to honor what he says. Like he said, just don't always think of the sad, think of the good memories. And we try to, but it's hard. It's hard to do that. Even when the person he was so graceful about it, and he died with such dignity, and we got to say everything we wanted to say, and it's still hell. Like it's still,
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's harder when you don't get to say those things. Like
Yeah. Well, that honestly just makes me smile. Just you telling that story. It just shows like the true depth of Ben's character, and like that's just a tribute to how good a person he was to do that in that situation. And like, when you're told you're terminal, that's when like your true character comes out, I think. So
yes, yeah, and
yeah,
like I have to say he handled it with real grace and real dignity. Like he literally did not seem afraid. Like he did not seem to rail against it like I think I would have at 19.
Yeah.
I don't know. He seemed to have made a lot of peace with it somehow in a short time.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't think anyone, like no one knows what they would do in that situation, you know what I mean?
No.
That's, yeah.
and in his particular case, the oncologist, there was really no bones made about it. Like, they were very abrupt that your case is very terminal and it's going to be like he didn't catch a break, like, we're going to try this. We did try some things, of course, chemo, but it didn't work. We told the oncologist, we'll sell our place, we'll go to the States, we'll try immunotherapy, and like, we'll try whatever. But she said he's too ill to travel. He can't go to the States. Like, he won't make it across the bridge, is what she told us. So as parents, we're like, we don't even get a shot at trying to fix this. And it was just the type of cancer. Obviously, there's other cancers that give you a few more options, but his was, it had metastasized to his lungs. So that's, you can't live without your lungs. You can't, he couldn't, it was respiratory at the end. He couldn't breathe. So yeah, like, it's quite a journey. And then it's a terrible journey to watch your other child suffer that. Ben and Emma were pretty close, and he was 3 years older, as 3.5, as a big brother. He was a pretty good big brother. Like, they were, I mean, I'm not saying they never had their moments, but they were pretty,
of course, yeah.
They were pretty good friends. He was pretty good to her, and she suffered a lot, Charlie. It's hard to watch them suffer this. And 1 year, I've learned 1 year is nothing. Like, all those anniversaries you get through, and there's perhaps a bit of a myth out there that after that you're kind of on your way.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to have the first year over, but it's certainly not the end of it. That's been my experience. It's not, yeah.
One thing you said that really stuck with me, too, because we were going through it, you know, you were a little bit ahead, a few months ahead. You said that you don't really start to deal with it maybe after the first year, or you really don't start to, it doesn't hit you until after the first year.
Yeah.
And I think that it's true. It's true. I'm sure it's different for everyone, you know, but it's like the shock like kind of starts to go away after a year.
Yes.
So then that's when I thought the second year was worse for me.
I would agree with that. The first year was so hard that I didn't think the second year could be harder, but it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say my husband found that as well, and I'm not sure about Emma. I think we all found the second year harder, and we couldn't imagine that because the first year was so hard. And then the second year is like harder in some ways because life is moving on, and you're not, and they're not with you anymore, and people are supportive, people have been great, but it's everything's moving forward, and that's hard too. It's hard to see life going on, but that's the way it is. But yeah, and the shock wears off. I think it carries you through a little bit in the first year, and then for me, like, I was grieving heavily and very devastated, but I definitely hit a depression by the third year. I think I just was worn out and depleted. So it's quite a grueling journey for sure, and it's. Special occasions are still and always will be a challenge. Like, we just came through Father's Day, and like all those occasions are harder than the ordinary days for our family. I don't know if that's for everyone. His birthday and his birthday is actually, there's been so much support from you guys, his friend group, that helps us a lot, and that's a hard day, but it's great to have that support. Helps kind of get us through it.
All the beers too, eh?
Yes. More drinks than usual for sure on those nights. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like it helps for sure. The company and The drinks don't hurt either, yeah,
Mhm.
on those big days,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's always so good to see you guys too, and like all of our friends love coming to visit.
Yeah, and I was going to say about that, um, like you mentioned earlier about the digital age and technology, but you know, people say, well, the generation you're in, people, do they have as much compassion and social skills? But I have to say, Charlie and I have both said this, that we were blown away by the compassion of your age group, you guys, Ben's friends, and there was just so much compassion. And the friend group just kept coming out to our house, about a dozen or 15 of you, different times. And there was so much compassion. So it was encouraging to see that technology and the digital age certainly didn't destroy that in your friend group, in Ben's friend group. It was very good to see that. In fact, it seemed like as youth, you had a really good understanding of the depth of it, and maybe because you guys loved him too in a way. Maybe that's why. But there was a lot of compassion, and it was very encouraging to see that that's not gone.
Yeah. No, we definitely did love him too, and I think like, as sad as it is to say, but like when a tragic thing like this happens, it brings everyone closer together. So that could be part of it too.
Yes, and I often think of your friend group, like I never had the experience of losing one of my friends as a teenager or early young adulthood. It must have been quite well for you it was a double shock because Ben and then Carrie Lynn, but it must have been quite like at that age you don't really expect those things to happen.
No, not at all.
You
Yeah.
think you're invincible, and
Yeah.
that's the way it's supposed to be at 19 and 20, that carefree, you know, but it's...
Yeah, very carefree. Death is not even something you're really thinking about. Yeah, I remember when Ben died, it's just, it's just a shock. It just, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a really long time ago.
Yes, yeah.
To me anyway, he was just like a kid, and I remember just thinking like, I can't wait till he gets back. We're all gonna hang out, and then, you know, that's it. It's just, it's crazy.
Do you mind me asking, are you doing any better? Is that...
I would say that I'm doing better. This last year has been better. It's a period of growth for me.
Right.
I still deal with it every day, like, it's on and off, but I would say that I'm doing better now, and I'm finally starting to feel like I have some peace of mind or clarity. I'd say peace of mind, because your mind is just racing the whole time when you're grieving, and it's just like all these thoughts of like constant, and you never can get away from it. I'm finally starting to feel like, even in the last month or two, that I'm finally starting to get some peace of mind, and just feel like okay, like baseline again,
Yes, great, yeah. You can get more hours without the thoughts, like without the hard, difficult thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it still happens, like this week, for whatever week, for whatever reason. I mean, I just had a hard week this week, so and who knows why, but I had some crazy dreams. I'm sure you've had some crazy dreams too, but sometimes they just come up, and then it's like, you feel like you made a lot of progress, and then you might have some bad days, and then that's what it was like the whole time. I mean, like, it was just constantly, you're at the lowest low, and then you think you made a step up, and then you go 3 steps back, and then 1 step forward, 3 steps back, and then 2 steps forward, and then 5 steps back, and I can honestly say that I'm starting I'm starting to get some peace of mind, if that means anything.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That definitely makes sense that I hit hard there last September at his 3rd anniversary. And I, like you, I definitely have some bad days for sure. And sometimes it doesn't make sense you can't figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying. I'm getting a little bit more space between the tough thoughts or the sadness, and a little bit more ability to remember the good things.
Yeah.
But and I think I'm accepting that I'm going to carry this. And I've read some things that say the depth, like I've always loved Ben, so I'm going to carry it forever. Like I'm always going to miss my son, and I'm going to miss when I see someone graduating or getting married, or somebody having a baby, like some of you guys. Like there's always going to be those things that I'm like I'm happy for all the friends that are going through those next stages of life, of course, but I'll always, and I'm just starting to accept that, of course I'm going to grieve it forever, because he's my son, and he's still alive to me, like he's in my mind, like he's still.
Yeah.
So, but I'm getting more acceptance and more space between the really dark thoughts, and trying, or a little bit more ability to honor what Ben said. Like, he was a very carefree, maybe he wasn't a saint, that's for sure, but maybe you have different, see different sides.
He could have been.
Yeah, he could have been a saint. But he was so carefree and joy of life. He had a joy of life, Ben.
Yeah, he did. He really did.
And I try to remember that he said that he had a good life, and it was short, but I try to remember that spirit that's Ben. Like he'd be just saying, "Come on, you guys, move on." Like he'd be.
I know. Yeah.
He had a sense of humor. He was joyful. I think he was pretty joyful. Like
he was, yeah.
And kind of carefree, like not a worrier at all.
No.
And anyway, so I try to honor who he was and think about that.
And I could always hear it in his voice. So, just go have fun, man.
That's exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly.
Live your life, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He had this philosophy that just get on with things, and fun was a big part of that for him, and a joy of some spirit. He had some spirit.
Was he a deep thinker when he was younger?
I didn't know the extent of that, because he always kind of hit it with that sense of humor and that easygoing kind of manner. But when I think back, he was a deep thinker, because he could relate to like an elderly relative, or he could relate to Emma when she was a tiny baby, and he could be very kind, and so I think he was a deep thinker. But he just had that easygoing way that kind of disguised it. But in the Wake lineup, I heard more, and I learned more about him, ironically, when he passed, because in the Wake lineup, there was all you good friends, of course, but then there was like probably 100 or 50 or 100 kids that came through from the rural that weren't good friends of his, but a number of them said to me, I didn't know him well, but he was the kindest guy. I didn't know him well, but he gave me a seat on the bus, a girl said. And I didn't know him well, but he did this for me. And that was not that, like, he didn't talk about that, or he didn't, that wasn't the first thing you saw. The first thing you saw was that smile and that fun-loving, let's have fun, let's go out. But there was, but he didn't advertise it. Like, I heard many stories about that in the Wake lineup from just acquaintances, and it was, then I realized, yeah, that was his essence. He did have a deeper side. So that was, and as a little child he did, but he always kind of had that humor that it wasn't the first thing you saw, it was this deep thinking, you know? So, ironically too, a couple of his friends, good friends, had said, and his girlfriend at the time, and Emma, his sister, had said that Ben often said to them that he was going to die young. And I said, really? Like, do you just mean you might be having a couple of beers? And he'd say, and they said, no, he talked about it. And he never talked about it to his mother, that's for sure, but there was some, he had said that a number of times, so it just kind of makes you wonder if people know things, or, you know, if it just...
It does make you wonder for sure.
It makes you wonder. And he certainly wasn't as shocked as I thought he'd be when he was told what was happening, so I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he was a little more prepared than I thought, I don't know.
Intuition or spiritual, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, yeah, I've been reading more about the spiritual life, and yeah, so you do wonder about all of that, what the journey is for different people.
Did Ben's death change your view of life?
Yes, for sure. I'm much less worried about outcomes, like, in the sense of, like, you could get worried about this or that, or like job or school for Emma, or little things do not worry me anymore. Like, I don't worry as much because I'm like, nothing is really that important. There's there's big things that happen in people's lives, that's important, death, and there's some tragedies but so many things are not worth worrying about. I did learn that, and I'm a little bit more mindful because I was in such pain the first years. I was in such depth of pain that I've learned to enjoy moments, which I've been forced to be mindful, because like for the first years, like you mentioned, you're like racing thoughts, and the pain and the thoughts are so intense that you can't really get a break from it. So even on those early years, if you could enjoy a cup of coffee for 5 minutes and not have a thought, then you're like, I really am glad I can just have 5 minutes and not be thinking about the loss. So, and now I get more space in between, but I do find I'm more mindful about, I can't be happy about everything because I've lost a son, but I have learned to enjoy seeing some of the smaller pleasures in life, like the dog playing, or trying to enjoy a good meal, or trying to enjoy nature, or trying to embrace when something good happens to Emma or Charlie. Like, I'm more able to enjoy the moments, but so it's changed that way. But yeah, I'd say that's the biggest change. And working on this one, but you take a knock, your optimism takes quite a knock. Like, I have to really struggle to believe everything. Like, optimism is not my strong suit now, because one of the worst things that I could imagine happened to me. So I struggle with that optimism. Like, Emma got in a minor car my daughter got in a minor car accident right around his 3rd anniversary, and I was just, my reaction to that was way bigger than it needed to be, because I was like, just fear that something else that bad. If somebody could get that sick and die in a month. Yeah. So I do struggle with the optimism. I've gained a little bit of more mindfulness and less worry, but it's hard to believe everything will work out, but I'm working on that one, working on that one.
Yeah, I think you just realized that, like, how temporary and how fragile life is.
Yes.
And how easily it can be gone as fast as it was there.
Yes.
Yeah, so the same exact, everything you just described for me, starting with what's really important and just like nothing really bothers me anymore. It's
Yeah.
like no one's dead. Like that's the first thing that comes to my mind. If like something doesn't work out, or like we get ourselves so stressed out over and worried about things like, am I gonna get this job and school, whatever it is. Like no one's dead. I'm still okay,
Yes.
healthy. People I care about are healthy. That's really what's important, and everything else is it kind of is freeing in a way, because you just like you realize like what is actually important, and you're not stressing about shit that isn't.
So true, so true. It's like, that's a good way to put it, because it's often my first thought too is this could be so much worse. Nobody's in the hospital, nobody's dying here. This is nothing. This is nothing worth worrying about.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm a little bit more empathetic. I was pretty good that way because that's my profession, and I was a counselor, but I'm definitely more empathetic to tragedies, like other people's losses, even some of the major tragedies you see, like with other countries and children.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Children suffering and so on. But for sure, you don't have much time for the trivial parts of life anymore.
No.
So the worrying has dissipated somewhat, for sure. Except when it comes to the people I love, and then it might have increased a bit.
Yeah, because you realize what could be, the
Yes.
pain that could be.
Yes.
And I think that goes with like you said, like you're more empathetic towards seeing other people's loss. I feel that too. And I think that's because you know what they're gonna go through. And I see that when someone dies, it's like I just empathize so much for them, and I just know what they're gonna go through.
Yes.
It's like, oh, my phone is ringing over there. Just one sec.
Your
Oh yeah, empathizing with people's
yes,
death. Yeah.
yes.
Are we still going, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that. Yeah, it's just like what they have to go through now, and you just feel it. Whereas before, like, I never experienced it before. You always empathize. You're like, oh, that's terrible. Even when you just see like someone losing anyone. But you have a deeper understanding of it, I guess, like what they have to go through now.
Yes, for sure. And one of the books I read said, there was a quote in there that you get grief to the depth that you've experienced it.
Yeah.
So,
And I often think about that, like, with you, you guys, Emma, Carrie Lynn's parents, like, and Carrie Lynn's family as well. Like, I lost Carrie Lynn. She was a girlfriend, and it was terrible, and I still deal with it, but I'm doing a lot better. But I also don't know what it's like to lose a sibling, and I've never had a kid, let alone lost one. So I think, like, it's all different, and like the depth of grief is, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to compare pain, and it's hard to know what people go through, and I empathize for you guys, because like I couldn't imagine it.
yeah, it's really, really hard. It's really difficult. I can't speak for Emma, but I have a feeling the heartache of losing her brother was bad, and it was really hard. She found, of course, she loved Ben. And then she, in some ways, lost the parents she knew. Because our core is still the same, but we were in such grief that I'm sure it was scary to see that sometimes, how sad we were.
Yeah.
So, and we did as best we could in terms of making sure like things were looked after for her and so on. But I'm sure, and a sibling loss, there's a lot of information that says it's kind of the silent loss, like it's not like when parental loss is, there's lots of books on it, lots of information on it. Sibling loss, not so much, but they suffer greatly, and I think, I shouldn't speak for Emma, but I think she's finding it, she's getting more space, more peace as well, like you, but it's quite a tragedy to go through at 16 years old, like when you're,
No, it really is.
when you're supposed to be out having fun, and yeah. She's done well, but it was a very difficult thing for the whole family, yeah. And Charlie losing his only son, that's, well, either child would be terrible, but he does, there's just so many losses within this, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you working again as a counselor?
Yes, and that's another part of the story. I was full-time the last few years before Ben died. I had been part-time when they were little kids, and then when they got into junior high, I started working full-time again, and I was full-time at the mental health center here in town, and my job was a very intense job. It was intake screening for potentially suicidal youth, so I had to screen and try to indicate who needs to get in quickest and as best you can to try to facilitate services. So when Ben died, I didn't go back to work. I was off work on disability because of the loss, and then I decided I couldn't go back to that intense of a job. It was, with what I was feeling and dealing with, I couldn't do it. So anyway, then I took some more time off, but now I'm doing part-time private counseling, and I can sort of set my own hours, and that helps a great deal because some days are harder than others for me. Right. And that's been a really good thing for me, and ironically, starting to just be a natural progression. I'm getting more referrals for grief, people who've lost a loved one, and a few more trickling in from other bereaved parents. And that's, surprisingly, I can do that without losing focus and getting all triggered on for some reason I'm able to do it. Like I can be at home and open a drawer and see a sweater of Ben's, and I can be a mess there, but somehow in the session with another parent that's lost a son or a daughter, I'm okay. I don't get too engulfed with my own grief. So it's been a natural progression to start seeing those clients, but that's only in the last, I'm coming up on 4 years, and I'm only starting to see other parents in the last maybe 6 months. The first 3 years I wouldn't have been able to. But that's been a good thing, I think.
Was it, given your knowledge on the subject, was it kind of odd to go through it yourself? Maybe having helped people go through it before, like as far as grief, and like, what's it like now counseling people, like after being through it yourself? Yes,
it was kind of strange having the job I had, because for 2 reasons. Because it's a job counseling people, I was kind of out of a job because full time, I couldn't go back. I couldn't counsel people when I was that low in grief. And number 2, like I knew so many counselors that were kind of friends that it was hard to find someone that I didn't know personally to go to talk to. But then I do think I worked with people who had lost children before, who had been through grief similar to yours, and I think I did my best, but I underestimated it. I did my best, but I can clearly see now that I underestimated the depth of it, and how it's changed how I work now is I would take a lot more time with those clients. I would recognize that it's going to be a long process. I would ask to see their picture. I would ask about that person more. Like, I just totally have a whole deeper level of, and I get how much pain they're in. Like, I really understand how much pain, like they can be buying groceries or going to a job, but I understand that they're suffering every minute, like every hour of that day. They're struggling to just do the normal things, and the fatigue, and like I'm sure you experienced it, we all experience it with grief, but like you say fatigue and loss of energy, but it is so fatiguing and your energy is so low. Like I just understand that so much better. There was times Emma was in grade 11, there was times I'm like, I get up, I make her breakfast, I might drive her to school, make her breakfast, and go back to bed. But make sure I'm up when she gets home. But I was so fatigued and lack of energy. I just made sure I was there for her, but then once she was at school, I had to go back and rest because I was just, so I understand that depth of it for people, that there's these grief checklists like fatigue and trouble sleeping, insomnia, and low energy and forgetfulness. And when you do a checklist, it's almost like, I don't know, minimizes it or something. I just know how deep those things check off go. Like it's a struggle every day in the beginning, in the early years.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between reading and understanding versus going through it yourself.
Totally, yeah. And I do think we need more advocate. This is why I think I'm really proud of you doing this, and I think it's great you're doing this, because I think we need more talk about this. Grief in our culture, I think, is minimized a little bit or not discussed maybe that much, and I think there needs to be more avenues for helping people deal with grief. I'm not sure we're doing enough, really.
Yeah. I don't even know. This hit me like over the head like 3 years ago, and
Yes.
I've just been in it the whole. I feel like I'm finally starting to see the light and be the person I want to be, like myself, and come out of it a little bit. But I think I just had no idea before. So maybe you're right. I think it's not something young people talk about, or unless they lost somebody, right? Yeah.
Sometimes I just wonder if we need to find more avenues of support or for those going through it, but
it seems like there just should be more support for mental health in general.
yes, I think there's a lot of good mental health professionals here, but we need more. We need more. We need.
I've been this thought lately of like, some kind of center. Like, and I thought about this a lot when I was going through this. Like, and I think I've heard of like grief centers. I don't know if I made that up. But,
Yes.
But there should just be mental health centers, where people can go that are struggling, and it's like, say it was in some kind of facility, and like there was like, you could even have like almost like classes. I don't know who you would get to run them, but like, an AA meeting where everyone just shares their things.
Yes.
You could have just that. It's like, share what you're going through, and like even that I know it could help someone so much.
It's interesting you say that, because I've had that same thought since I've lost Ben, that there should be an AA for grief.
Yeah.
Not AA, but a grief
Similar format, right?
format, yes.
Yeah.
I totally, because it's only other people who are experiencing grief that that camaraderie and that support is important.
It is, it really is. And I think too, like, probably depression, same thing, probably anxiety. Like, if you just had like, I'm sure it could be beneficial for any mental health problem, like just a group of people that are going through the same thing and share their stories, because I think people can get so locked in to their own head of, and I mean, you have a much more in-depth understanding of this, but with like depression, specifically like just locked into their depression, what they're going through, and then they don't see a way out, or they think it's just them, or you know what I mean, they just get so wrapped up. So just sharing it is so important. Yeah, I think it could be cool to have a place where you could do that.
Yeah, there's, I think, more need. There's one group for sure for parents in Charlottetown. And that's great, but I do think we need more resources somehow, and not like, there's just so many layers of grief. Like that particular one that I'm thinking of was for parents, but then there's your situation where it's a significant other, and there's a couple of groups running now, but I do think there's so much grief that we could use more for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go to the parent one?
I did, and it was certainly helpful to hear from other parents, what they were experiencing. But I didn't stay very long.
Sad.
Partly I just did not have the energy at that time to like, it was good, and it was good to be acknowledged that other parents were dealing with this, but I found my energy was so low that getting out on a Sunday afternoon and going to the group, personally for me, was just a little too hard at that time.
Yeah.
Now other people would get energized from that, but I found it, I just needed to be home and in my safe place at that point.
Yeah. It's all about what you can do with the time too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that first couple of years is pretty rough.
And in your case, there wouldn't be a grief group that would suit your particular need at that time. I don't think there's anything that specific.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you'll look for it too, even when it happens. I remember like searching up on the internet, like people who've lost their girlfriend to suicide or significant other, and just reading stories, just because I was so like felt really alone. In the situation, and like that, just reading them, just like, you know, telling the story of what happened, just made me feel a little bit better, at least just knowing that. So yeah, I think, yeah.
Yes, websites helped me a little bit too. There was one, Open to Hope. It was about loss, not just child loss, but other kinds of loss as well. And a bed, Open to Hope was for general, any kind of loss. A Bed for My Heart was for child loss. And those, just like you, I was searching for like other people that lived through it, and how did they live through it. It's good to hear those stories that they're like, okay, they're 4 years in or they're 5 years in, and they somehow made it through. Because in those early days, you're thinking, how am I gonna ever?
You're just looking for like a path. Like, is there a path out of this?
Yes, is there a path, and how do I keep going? You know.
Is there anything that you did along the way, kind of to help you? I know there's probably 100 different things, but is there any really significant things maybe that you use to help you along the way with grieving and mental health?
Yes, for me, I needed to rest a lot, and I'm not saying that's for everybody, because there's always the risk that you're resting too much, but I don't mean that. I wasn't in bed for days or anything like that, but I did find I needed to rest, like lie down sometimes. I was just maybe for 20 minutes here and there. But the other things that helped me the most were hypnotherapy, which is not where you're fully hypnotized necessarily. It's more of a guided visualization to help calm down the brain, because you're so on high alert and stressed. Hypnotherapy there's a person trained in it here, Darlene Way, at Atlantic Hypnosis Center. And that helped me. It helped take some of the edge off, reduce the pain.
So what is the session?
Yeah,
like?
I've recommended Darlene and hypnotherapy to a number of people since then, because now I've gone through it and I trust it. So it was a good, so you go in, you talk, it's a little bit of talk therapy in the sense she gets to know, asks a little bit about what brings you there. But then she moves into an exercise depending on your situation. For some people, they're coming for anxiety. I was coming, of course, for grief. And she takes you through a guided exercise that's specific to you. And in my case, it was a visualization, trying to take me through a visualization of seeing Ben at his best and the way he is and was. And not seeing Ben, like I was having trouble moving past, and I still do some days, seeing him, watching him die in his hospital bed. I could not get that image out of my head, and that was robbing me of the beautiful young guy, the handsome young guy that was Ben. So I couldn't get that image out of my head, and she helped me by taking me through some guided images, visualizations about seeing Ben, and she talked me through it and talked me through some of what did he look like when he graduated, what did he look like. So that was very helpful, and that was specific to me, but she does have guided exercises for different people, different situations. So that was very helpful. She's here on the island, so it's a great resource. And another Reiki, which I would recommend to people, but before this I didn't know anything much about it. And my daughter's studying that as well, so I'm learning more through her, but also learned through my daughter, because she's studying it, and through this person I went to see at Health Within, Denise Arsenault. She's a Reiki master, and that's a session where you go in and there's energy blocks. They're trained that they can sense energy blocks in your body, and when you've been through a trauma of losing somebody, it's a trauma to your mind and your body. And there's a story about that. I don't know how much time, but there is a story about that that's quite significant about the energy block. I don't know if this is the time to.
You can get into it if you want to. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. We got time.
Okay, so just to highlight how powerful Reiki did help me. Again, everything just helps you reduce the pain. I'm not saying you're pain free, but it helps reduce the pain of the loss. But with the Reiki, I had the experience of not being in a teary mode that day. Like having gone through grief, I'm sure you know there's days where you're very, very emotional, and other days you're a little bit better. So that particular day, I wasn't in that teary. I didn't feel like I needed to cry. I was in there for Reiki, and I wasn't in that emotional place. So she does the Reiki, and so she basically touches lightly on your shoulder or your chest or your. In my case, Ben had cancer. His original site was his left knee, and I wasn't even thinking about that at that particular time. I was thinking about Ben, but not where he got the cancer.
Yeah.
She touches my left knee, and it wasn't like crying. It was like gushes of water just came out of my eyes. Like I didn't even have any sense that it wasn't even like crying. It was just like water flowed out of my eyes, like a lot. And then she just kept going, and I'm like, I didn't have any control over it. Like it was something about the energy system in the body. I had no control. It was involuntary. Like it just happened. She kept going, and at the end of the session, I said, what the heck was that? And she said, you are a mother, and you were trying to carry his pain for these 3 years now. You're trying to carry that pain in your knee. And that was blocked energy, and it was just powerful. Like I did feel a little lighter after. I wasn't thinking about going through my days thinking about like his left knee or my left knee, but there was something about that body, my body was holding that, like.
So it was some kind of release.
It definitely was a release, and that's what, like my daughter knows more about that, but that's what they call it, an energy release that the body was carrying, holding on to. So Reiki was helpful, and this is gonna sound like not everybody is, and I never thought about it before either, but I went to a medium a few times. Renita Baird is a medium on the island, and that was helpful too, because I got some messages that were said to me that really nobody else but Ben would know. So
Right.
I found that helpful. I had to try it because I just felt I have to go talk. If there's a chance that this works,
Yeah.
I need to talk to somebody who
Mhm.
could connect me with them.
Mhm.
So those were three very helpful things for sure.
I think at that point it's like I don't even care if it's not real. Like if they just gotta try it.
Yes, exactly. If there's a chance, like I'm going. If
Yeah.
there's a chance to connect with that person, I'm there.
Yeah, I think you're like way past ego at that point. Where like, no, that's not real. It's like there's a chance, I'm gonna go. And yeah, if it can help even a little bit, I'm gonna do it.
That's a good point. That's another way your life changes, because the ego you're not so. Yeah, when you're in that much pain, ego is not a thing anymore, is it?
It's like such a high. You're so vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're so vulnerable, and you just realize how vulnerable you are, and how vulnerable life is, and everybody that you love, and how much you need the people that you love. Like,
Yeah.
they're the only thing that gets you through it.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's so true. You just feel so. I described it to somebody, asked me about it, and I said, when you say vulnerable, I said, I just feel like somebody skinned me alive. Like I felt so raw.
Did you feel that your confidence went down?
Yes.
Went away?
Yes. I never had social anxiety before. Like I was quite fine to go out socially, and I lost that for a while. I did some, but I lost. I could, like retirement parties or simple things that I would never think about before. I just didn't have the energy or the confidence to do it. Yeah, definitely my confidence took a hit.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, I don't know if I can get through the next hour, so I don't know if I can go to work today.
Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
confidence is like, well.
Yeah. Yeah, mine was 100% shot. I just, yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. Just everything was gone. I was nervous around people. I just wasn't confident in myself. And it's just, I guess that happens, but it's just like, it was like the last thing that you think would happen, you know? I don't know. It was crazy.
Well, it changes the person you knew of yourself before. Like you're not this.
Become a new person.
Yeah, you're in transition, so I think that confidence is like, it's such a huge event in your life. It's almost like becoming yourself again. So
Yeah.
you're like a toddler or something. You just feel like this is so huge. I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, I feel like I'm finally starting to feel like I'm starting to be myself again, or the new version of myself.
Is having this form of expression, like this
Yes.
podcast helping? Yeah.
It is for me, yeah.
Yeah.
I find any bit of creative expression has been really helpful for me.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I think you mentioned that before, that you played guitar, or you.
Yeah, guitar. I play a lot of piano.
Yeah.
Piano's big, and drums too, and stuff. But just anything, like I just play to play, and it just makes me feel better. It's like therapy.
Great. I am glad to hear you're getting some more peace.
Yeah. So, what do you do currently as far as any therapies?
I'm not at the moment doing I did the hypnotherapy second year, that rough second year. And I did the Reiki at the end of the second year. So I'm not doing any therapy other than I'm doing spending a lot of time in nature, walking the dog, spending a lot of time in nature. I feel I could go back to St. Arlene for hypnotherapy if I needed a consult, and that's kind of there, so that gives me peace of mind that it's there.
Right.
I did have to take drug therapy this year for now, a mild antidepressant. But I kind of feel I've done quite a bit with the Reiki. I did talk to a psychologist from Toronto at one point on Skype. I kind of feel I've done a lot of that piece, and now I'm just trying to take time for me and walk the dog or be in nature. That's a big one for me. I kayak, Charlie and I kayak, and that's peaceful. And I do find I do need more rest, and I do find my stress tolerance is lower. So working part time is good because I can manage it, but I really don't think I could work full time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just everything I've been through. I find I have to try to eat well. I do yoga, and I do need a little more rest than usual. And I just started stepping out of my comfort zone and taking golf lessons with a few neighbor women, and that's really out of my comfort zone, but it's really fun. It's good.
That's
and
awesome.
I have to say I have improved, because last year I wouldn't have had the energy. I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So that's a huge step for me, because last year, number one, I wouldn't have had the energy to get out there and get up to the lessons and concentrate and retain anything they're telling me.
Yeah.
So this year I'm doing that, and it's been great.
That's awesome.
Like golf was not ever on my radar, but it's good.
Yeah. I think like when you like start doing something new and like learning, I think that like helps you for whatever reason.
I remember.
I think it's just healthy for the brain, probably.
It must be. I think you're right, and I remember you and Connor talking about that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what got in my head. I don't know, because the call came not too long after that. But I do remember you and Connor saying that helped, like just challenging another party. Like I've never. Certainly, that's a new challenge for me, because I've never played much. I said. I was joking, but not really. They thought I was joking when they asked women, like, if you played much golf, and I said the last time I played golf was 1995, and everybody laughed, but I was like, serious? Like, that was when Ben was born, so I think that might have been the last time I played golf. So anyway, it's been good, but I'm happy to see that I can do it this year.
Yeah.
Like, I had no
That's awesome.
desire, maybe you were the same with the grief at first, I had really no desire to
Do much.
do anything much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. You're just barely like living, so
It's
that's
a big day
yeah.
to, yeah,
you know, thinking about anything extra, learning something new.
yeah.
I think maybe too, maybe I'm just thinking about this deeply, but like learning something new is like and going outside of your comfort zone, like as far as grief, it's kind of like showing yourself that like life is going on, or like propelling yourself
Yes.
forward in life. Whereas like if you're just doing the same things, it's kind of just feels like life is missing, that part is missing.
Yes.
Life is still the same, but that part is missing. Whereas when you do something new, it's like, okay, now I'm living again, you know, or like,
Yeah, good point.
I
Yes.
just thought of that.
Yeah.
But
Now that that makes sense.
I've been doing a couple like I'm doing like the open mic at stand-up comedy
Are you?
nights.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for the last like month and a half. Like it's something I just
That's
like
new.
just
Yeah.
like getting out of my comfort zone. I love it. It's
Did it surprise you that
yeah.
you liked it? Yeah.
Yeah. I just it's cool. I think getting out of your comfort zone, just pushing the boundaries is definitely healthy for it in general. But yeah, it's been cool.
Great.
Yeah.
a new challenge for sure.
Yeah. So do you find like the SSRIs help?
Yes. And I find they help. And I was getting pretty well. I was getting just tired trying to cope with it. Like I couldn't, I was doing, in our business in counseling, they say, if you're doing all the, like I was surrounded by friends and family. I wasn't left alone to deal with this. I had help.
Yeah.
I did the counseling, I did the Reiki, I did try to exercise, walk the dog every day, tried this, yoga. So I was trying so hard to deal with this, but I was still so sad and not isolating totally, but you know, more often than not, if social thing came up, I was like, no, probably, like every so often I'd go, but lots of times I'd say no. And
Yeah.
I was trying to eat healthy and not, not do the things, the self-destructive things, like, I mean, not drink too, like, of course, not certain times you have a couple drinks on his anniversary and that.
Right.
Try not to go down that path. So I was trying to do the right things, but they weren't working enough. So then I had to try the SSRI, and I kind of asked the doctor, I said, have I always been low in serotonin? And anyway, everybody's situation's different, but his take on it was that no, not necessarily, because I never needed antidepressants before, but that this whole tragedy just depleted any kind of, it triggered the depression, it triggered a reduction in serotonin, and the SSRIs are definitely helping. And look, I know people are sometimes very hesitant to take them, but it's been a big help for me.
Yeah.
It's been a big help for me, and yeah, it's been good.
If it helps, it helps. Like whatever helps.
It's whatever helps. And I was also, when you mentioned ego before, it was like I was to the point of like, okay, it's 3.5 years, and I think I was really finding it hard the first 3 years, but I was just wearing out trying to continue to cope and not seeing a whole lot of light. So you don't have ego. I wasn't thinking, oh my God, I can't do that, I don't need that. I was thinking, whatever helps. I'm in a lot of pain and I need help. And the doctor I've seen in the mental health field has been great, and yeah, I think for some people that's great. Like, and other people, everyone's different like that. I needed that, but not everybody that goes through it needs it, like for sure. But I did and it sort of surprised me that it was 3.5 years in that it happened. But I was not just dealing with, I think what happened, well, it was definitely the grief, but then I was just worrying a lot about my remaining child too, and like other life things just seemed bigger too, and I just couldn't, everything was taking a lot of energy, so I don't know why 3.5. I didn't take them in the early months, so maybe I should have, but yeah, I don't know. But it's good. It has helped me for sure.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure there was kind of like a exhaustion feeling of just dealing with it for so long.
Yeah, and there's an old saying in counseling, like when we try to get people to look at things, cognitive behavior therapy, or change your thinking and you'll change how you're feeling, and certainly there's validity in that, but there's something called the 3 Ps. Is it permanent, pervasive, and personal? And if it's not all of those things, it's easier to maneuver your way through it. Like if you can say, well, it's not pervasive, it doesn't affect everything, or it's not permanent. But for this, losing Ben for me was permanent and pervasive and personal, and I just couldn't like, it's so permanent that I was like, I can't make my mind think that this is okay. Like, this is never gonna be okay. But it has given me the energy, and so did, like, of course, having like a daughter and a husband, that kept me going too. But I just needed a little extra help there to get over that loss of Ben. I'll never, and I get, no, not over it, but to deal with it better.
Get over the hump of that time period.
Yes, because, and now I'm accepting that, you know, that's gonna be with me. It's not gonna be as intense, but I'm sure that I will grieve Ben till I'm gone. Like, but not to the intensity, thankfully, that it was, where every day could be so painful. Like, so for sure that's been a help.
So you say like the intensity is like gone down a little bit since then?
Yes.
Like to the point now?
Yeah, like, and I had episodes like that too before I went on the SSRIs, where I'd have, you know, some good weeks, but then it would come back so full force sometimes, and not always on an anniversary. Like maybe on a day I find a book with his writing on it, or you know, there's all these reminders in his room, and we packed away some stuff, and we've dealt with his room, but there's always reminders everywhere. So I had some peace full weeks or days, but it would always come back full force. So now it's, and I still have bad days, but I get longer periods of time, and I'm having better energy. Like I'm having, my energy's improved since taking the medication. I was so depleted that I couldn't. And I think we were ultimately too, we had quite a trauma of a month. Your child is okay, then your child is deathly ill, and we had 4 weeks. And then you're in a funeral, and then you're trying to grasp the fact that he looked fine, and if there's pictures of him a week or two before he died, and or a week or two before he was diagnosed, and he was looking pretty healthy. And then it was so fast and so tragic at the hospital, and demanding, and like we were dealing with a very ill person for a very brief amount of time, but that was so stressful that I think that depleted us too, like, and then the grief, of course. So there's a lot of factors there for sure.
It's so hard for your mind to comprehend, like how quickly it happens.
Yes, and
and just death too in general. I think the brain just doesn't. There's a defense mechanism in there, I think, probably that, and that goes into the shock and everything. But you just can't wrap your head around it. It's impossible to. After it happens.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's because you're like on the outside, you're looking okay. I mean, you're getting groceries, and but that's almost a mind game too. Like, I'm sure you've had days like that where I'm like, I'm just looking like I'm normal, but it's sort of a twisted reality, because I'm like, I'm just dying inside, but people must think I look normal today because I'm getting groceries. And it sort of does something to your mind. You're like, wow, this is painful, but what do you do with it? Like, where do you put all that? But
I think it's also made me empathetic too to like what people go through, because you don't fucking know. Like you said, you just look normal, but like you just. You know, if anyone could see inside your mind, they'd be like, holy shit. Like they are going through a lot, and they go through a lot every day. Like, how many people are just walking around with that? And people go through crazy shit, you know?
Yes, for sure. There's there's no end to the tragedies that people have to face, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's always good to talk. And talking to you guys the last 3 years has helped me so much.
Well, you're quite welcome, and we definitely felt for you too, because we had a sense of what it must be like for you. We definitely thought about you a lot over those years too, and I'm very proud of you for doing this. I think it's great. It's great to start these discussions and not keep it in the dark like that. It's a real mental health, and all different kinds of losses are real thing, and we got to keep the conversation going. So you're quite welcome, and I'm glad to hear you're doing a little better too.
Thanks so much, I really appreciate this.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.